Hey everyone, welcome to the Influencer Management Panel at Collegiate Rising Summer 2021 presented by MSI. Once again, before we begin, please feel free to drop any questions you have in Twitch chat and we'll be answering those at the end of the panel. My name is Mark Kai. I'm going to be moderating today's session. I currently work in esports and influencer partnerships at PowerSpike, and in my role, I manage influencer and esports marketing campaigns on behalf of endemic and non-endemic brands. Our wonderful panelists today are Nick, Vicky, Lindsey, and Dom. I'll let them do a brief intro of themselves respectively. Why don't we start with Nick?
Oh, just as in like what I do or that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
just a brief little intro.
yeah, I manage our all of our creators here at Corsair. Be it from your Twitch affiliates all the way up to people like T-Pain or most recently announced Sykkuno. So we work with content creators of various sizes, and so I get to work with awesome people across the spectrum.
Awesome. And then Vicky, how about you?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Vicky. So I currently work at Fourth Wall, previously worked at Streamlabs / Logitech and also Hamel. Some of my current talents include more on the YouTuber side nowadays instead of streamers. So like Astrasis, the Fura family, etc. So for those of you who don't know what Fourth Wall is, we are basically a merge platform. So I do a lot of like merge with creators.
Awesome. And Lindsey, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Lindsey. I am the influencer campaign manager at Yellow Pike Media, which is an ad agency that deals a little bit more specifically with the gaming industry. And then before this, I was the North American esports and influencer coordinator for SteelSeries.
Awesome. And last but not least, Dom.
Hey guys, I'm Dom. I work at NVIDIA on the Creators and GeForce Now platforms. I manage a bunch of community advocates over there, currently working with, I guess we're giving examples, so P4 and Brick Black. Additionally, I'm also the industry liaisons lead for Anime Expo, and I get to work with a bunch of really awesome people over in Japan.
Awesome. We have a wide variety of folks here across the industry, folks who have been in the gaming and esports space for a while, folks who have, maybe more recently got into it. And so let's just first begin how everyone got in. So, all the panelists here work for some really prestigious brands and agencies. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are, where your journey started, and how do you find maybe your foot in the door in this pathway? So maybe Vicky, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, sure. So I actually started off as a content creator. So back in the days, I did a lot of like just chatting, League of Legends, IRL streams. And then at the same time, I was also working at Streamlabs. Back then I think I started off as like a support and social media person. And then once I kind of like, started streaming more, kind of getting more involved with the community, I realized that partnerships was kind of like my passion. And also just working directly with influencers and also being an influencer myself kind of gives me that perspective. And that's kind of like how everything started.
Awesome. And what about yourself, Nick?
Kind of the same actually. I started actually. This is my first job in the actual industry. I started doing content creation a bit myself as a way to kind of get that experience as, trying to, meet that requirement of like X amount of years required but to get into an entry level position was pretty difficult. I also did a lot of volunteer work, be it as a enforcer at PAX or in the later years working at DreamHack every time that they had an event running their stream studio. So trying to get as much experience as I could, basically using all my PTO and extra money to go to events just to be able to network and meet people. Until finally, just everything just kind of fell into place with the application of just like, oh, they won't reply back to me. I'd love to work at Corsair, but they'll never get back to me. And lo and behold, it all worked out.
Great story. We love the volunteer turning into full time. It's always I think a classic game in esports one. What about yourself, Lindsey?
Um, I, when it comes to, volunteering, that's also kind of how I got my start. So it was a little bit more on the esports and events side of things. Started out by attending a bunch of events, volunteered a lot, and then I started helping build tournaments. And then slowly moved into production. And then from there, I found myself like officially in the industry. And it's been great.
And what about yourself, Dom?
For me, I think I've just been always really lucky that people think of me whenever they need something. So for Anime Expo specifically, what happened for the industry liaisons department was that they had all quit, and I was part of a different department. But for whatever reason, like 5 years ago, I was really into wearing like business clothes and being very professional and like trying to break into like being more like suave, I guess. So whenever they needed someone that was more professional, they thought of the one person in the department that like was cool to wear casual clothes who wore like professional clothes. So they picked me, asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And then actually for NVIDIA, it's, because of COVID, I couldn't do as much events work that I typically would be doing. And someone actually thought like, hey, like Dom is very brand safe and is pretty good with a bunch of people, always extroverted, loves meeting people, loves going out to events. He might like to do this type of work. And they sent over the interview. He sent over the application right away. I started to interview against everyone that applied. So I got very lucky that I was already at the company, and eventually they picked me. So always in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I think from what we've heard, it just seems like a lot of, volunteering and doing side work kind of works well to get in the space, right? But I guess then just maybe let's start with Nick here, but what do you think set yourself apart from other candidates, right? I think we've heard creating your own content or volunteering, but we'll love to hear from you.
Honestly, I think it's a lot of what really helped separate me from my like other people that were applying for the job was a lot of empathy. Being able to put myself in content creator shoes or really figuring out like how like things that they would like, because a lot of my motivation in my job, be it like at Coursera or whatever's in the future sort of thing, is trying to, I guess, like provide support and services that I would have loved when I was more focused on content creating. Was lucky enough to work with a few different companies, be it like AMD, for example, and took those lessons and apply it pretty much every day now to that. What I'd like to be able to do. I was also very prepared in my interviews, was very a good thing. I kind of came in with a booklet of 20 or so content creators of various sizes. Here's who I'd work with and why. I think I was a bit over prepared for everything. So I think that kind of helps set me up for success in getting this job.
I think over preparation is definitely better than under. So
yeah, I'd actually
helps.
even gotten to the point of creeping on who is now my director, of like finding out that you played Alliance with World of Warcraft and threw out like an offhanded joke and just like, I don't know, you play Alliance, so I think I got to kind of pass. And it just kind of proved that like I'll go the extra step when it comes to reviewing people.
I think that's the camaraderie, right? It also builds maybe some off work time gameplay. But Vicky, Lindsey, Dom, and any of you, what do you think set yourself apart when you were playing?
Ladies first.
Okay, I guess I can go first. I think what sets me apart is that, I'll be honest, it was like the relationship that I had a lot with the creators. And by that, I think it was a lot, a mixture between like personal and also professional relationships. And I think I'm really good at kind of juggling between the two and making sure that I can build like a strong personal relationship with my business partners while still executing on business strategies and getting things done. And then I think the other thing that kind of sets me apart would probably be like, I am very open-minded when it comes to like just experimenting new operations and also just killing the ideas fast if, they're not producing results. So I think definitely being able to move fast and also kind of just handle relationships and carry yourself well is really important as an influencer management.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. I think relationships, it plays a huge role in this side of the industry, because without those relationships, you're not going to get anything done. So I feel like that is something that I had that really did help set me apart. But then in addition to that, it was also, being solutions driven. I always came to the table with an answer. And if I didn't have that answer, I would find it and make sure that whatever the task was, we could get it done within the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a lot about professionalism and seeing things through and doing them well. Literally all of those things are the reason why I'm in this position myself. So yeah, I want to echo everyone else's thoughts. And the only other thing I think that's like slightly different is that I think I have a history of like making sure that not only like does my stuff go well, but the stuff that, whoever I'm working for is who I think about and making sure that they do really well and they look really good. And I think that really put me ahead of a lot of other candidates.
Often heard making your boss's job easier is how you get promoted, right? So you can do that. I think that often helps. So another question, I think, a lot of people come out of college or high school knowing that they want to work in gaming or esports. And so what was the moment that maybe you decided you were passionate about this and you want to work in influencers specifically, right? A lot of people might want to work in that, gaming esports, but maybe they're not sure what in gaming esports. So maybe was there a specific moment there? Lindsey, we can start with you.
I don't know if there was a specific moment that I decided, I want to work with influencers, but I know that there was a moment where I was like, wait, I need to be in the gaming industry. Like, that's what I want to do. And it was the first time I ever attended PAX Prime, which is now known as PAX West. I remember standing in the middle of the convention floor, looking around being like, wait, people do this for a living. And then from then on, it's like, I got to figure out how to get there. And things just sort of slowly progressed. And now it's all influencers all the time.
I can share in that same exact thing because that was the same moment, like the first time going to PAX Prime. Back when it was that of yes, I need to figure out how to be here. But it wasn't until like later at like DreamHack for myself of where it was like actually taking over and running the streamer studio. That is just like how much I enjoyed, I guess, kind of like playing the support role as like from taking that from games to career. And being able to kind of like provide more for creators that was like, man, I just want to work with content creators all the time now. And it just kind of so happened that just like, started looking for those jobs specifically.
Dom, you can go first. You let me go first earlier.
All right, very cool. Yeah, honestly, I don't even know if this is what I want to do for a career. I know that I like doing it and I know that I'm good at it. I think that my passion for doing things well is what kind of sees me through. Obviously, it's really nice to be working with big people and like making sure that they know like the brands and stuff like that. For me, I really believe in the product, and I really believe that like this is something that people could really utilize well, and that helps a lot. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, my turn. Sorry, my bad. So I think for me, it was definitely the first ever TwitchCon that happened in San Francisco back in 2015. So like I started streaming around like 2015 January. So like a couple months later, people were like, yo, Vicky, are you gonna go to TwitchCon? I'm like, wait, people are actually gonna go to this convention? Like, is it legit? And then kind of I had a few friends that were streaming at the time, which some of them are actually working in the space now. We all went to the convention together, and then that's when I felt like, oh my God, there's like a sense of community and belonging here. And just kind of walking around the convention floor, I remember that I was like, who are these partnerships people? I want to be one of them. And I think that was kind of when I was still in community college and I was trying to figure out like what to do. And then there was like this like kind of aha moment where I was like, this is it. Like, I definitely want to be like part of this community in one way or another, whether it be like an influencer or be someone in the space. But overall, I just really wanted to contribute to like the whole ecosystem. Because back then there were no brand sponsorships, there were no partnerships at the time. I think a lot of it was just like, a lot of streamers actually relied on subs and donation as a living, and no one really thought that like brand partnerships was even a thing. And then just as I was part of the industry, like more and more, I see that like this is kind of like how it has evolved. And that's when I realized I wanted to do like dedicate 40 hours a week of my time to kind of help the ecosystem and be a part of it.
You can do a whole case study on a convention. There's so many things that go on all the time. It's its own ecosystem, right? So I can't wait for those to come back eventually. So we've been talking a lot about how we got in the space and what was that moment. But for those people who are in the chat, maybe actually want to be an influencer manager, let's talk about a day in the life, like what it actually being an influencer manager is like, right? It might seem like glamorous working with all these creators, and it is, but what is the actual day-to-day life like? What are the kinds of things you work on, and maybe what are some of the tools you use every day? Dom, maybe we can start with you.
Sure, yeah. I am literally reviewing talent every day, all the time, watching Twitch streams, checking the Scully Gnome, looking Twitter. making sure people are brand safe. NVIDIA is like a really big, like, make sure like these people have no scandals, like none of that stuff. So literally, I think Nick touched on it earlier. It's a lot of research, and a lot of just, like, does this person make sense for the brand, right? Like, not only do they have to have a lot of like, people that are following them, and that they have to be able to hit like talking points and all this stuff, but like, does it make sense, right? Like for example, I'm just gonna pull out like iJustine is very like Mac driven, right? She's a giant influencer, but it doesn't make sense to have her promote like, like non-Mac stuff because everyone knows that's part of her brand. Um, Not to say that she could never do that one day, but for now, that's what she's known for. So a lot of it is just reviewing people and making sure that, there's an authentic enthusiasm for whatever you're promoting.
I can go next. So I think my day-to-day might be a little bit different just because of the nature of our platform. But for me specifically, right now, I'm kind of on the account management side. So kind of like a overall big picture breakdown. Influencer management is very much just like sales. And then making sure that you run through like the customer cycle, and then there's like the sales part, and then there's like the customer success part. I'm more on the customer success part. So what this means is that like communicating with partners to make sure that that they're getting their merch set up, and that they're promoting it, and kind of like sharing the best practices and best strategies on how to promote their stuff and how to move forward, and a lot of like just creator education on how to like promote things and be brand safe about it. But I think like the day-to-day really varies depending on like using Solinome and Social Blade to meeting one-on-one with creators, and then also putting out fires. For example, it's at a different company, but I remember when I was at Hamel, I was working with an influencer, and the influencer got caught up in like a scandal. So then you have to figure out, how do I put out the fire? What are the best actions to move forward and stuff to maintain that brand image? But yeah, overall, it's very similar to kind of like customer success, sales, and account management.
Nick or Lindsey, either of you?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of my day to day these days is very much trying to keep up with everyone. Right now, we are going like a little bit of a transition, and so it's right now it wouldn't be normal that I'm handling this many content creators. So it's a lot of trying to keep up with what everyone's doing. But I'd say normally it's kind of preparing for what's coming up, be it new products, and trying to figure out who's going to be the best fit for those. Trying to provide information to all of our creators to make sure that they're well equipped to answer questions about that, even if they aren't ones that are going to be like necessarily promoting the product. It's a lot of it's same thing as well, trying to keep up with the countless applications. I think there are times of where we have multiple thousands of applications pending of people wanting to work with us, and trying to properly go through and give everyone's application a fair look, instead of just like, oh yes, you have this many viewers, well sorry, it goes in the bin. If it's someone's passionate and wanting to work with us, chances are we can look to do something. But it's a lot of like trying to plan ahead and then meet those timelines that you've set for yourself day to day.
For me, I would say a huge part of it is just constantly doing research. One of the most important things, being like an influencer campaign manager in this industry, is just knowing what the trends are. It changes so fast from day to day that you want to be ahead of it, and you want to know who's on the rise, who's on the fall, who might be good for this opportunity, who could we get in contact that might work well for this one campaign that we're planning on doing. So it's a lot of research, and then sort of on the other side, when it comes to dealing with like content creators, I don't have as many accounts now that I work with, but back when I was with SteelSeries, I had a lot of accounts, and sometimes it felt a little bit like herding cats. They're all running in different directions, and just making sure that everybody's on the same page. And it was a lot of communication, talking to managers, talking to agents, talking to the creators themselves often. So it was just, it was chaos, but it always felt like there was a little bit of a rhythm to it. So you fell into it, and it was just the day to day.
Yeah, cadence of communication and research. It seems like it's the big one. I don't know how many reminder messages or emails I've sent. That is so much. I think of a lot of our jobs too, because creators, they're busy. They're doing their content. They're thinking of the next idea. So that's a big part of it. And I think kind of speaking of which, it's not always glamorous. The grass is always greener, right? But influencer management, it's a highly softer area. So from your perspective, what do you think is the biggest issue or some of the most tedious work you always dread doing when you're an influencer manager? And I'm sure there's that one thing.
Auditing. 100% auditing. It's the whole thing of not just making sure that people are brand safe, but then that they're following through and doing the proper thing. Be it like using the proper logo, making sure that they're actually doing social posts, or providing clips, using the products. There's many number of things you need to follow up on with people that are contracted, and making sure that you're getting that actual that return for the money or product or time is the biggest thing. So like every month it's kind of just like, oh, we're done with the audit and we're done following up with people, and suddenly it's the next month and we start it all over again. So it's always a big time commitment.
Yeah, chasing deliverables sometimes from creators can feel like pulling teeth. But once you get them, it's great.
It's not necessarily auditing for me, but it's kind of like going back and forth on the merch designs and going back and forth on like the placement. And then I remember very clearly, it's like they're about to launch their merch, and then they just wanted to, can we just scratch everything and scrap everything and just do it all over again from the beginning? I had like a creative idea that I really wanted to execute on. So I just want to do everything from the beginning again. And yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely awful. I think everyone is avoiding maybe this topic, but or I know Nick mentioned it a little bit, but having to write the most like politically correct and while maintaining relationships message if someone gets involved into a scandal. Like you have to like very carefully navigate a million relationships if someone gets into a scandal, or you have to cut off like a sponsorship, and you want to make sure that like everyone understands why, and that like it's not like X person's fault and not B person's fault, but like we have to do it for ABCY reason. It's just a lot of like very carefully navigating relationships, honestly.
I think that was actually an interview question I was asked, which is, like if you're managing an influencer, you're partnering with an influencer and they're just going to, what do you do? So I was like, yeah, it seems like Dom maybe has mastered that skill, right?
Still learning.
So let's flip it on the other side, right? What are some of the best parts, about influencer management? I think we've alluded to, just working with content is super cool, but do you have any specific memories or experiences that you've highlighted in your career that really stick out to you? Maybe Vicky, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I think my favorite part of it is definitely like conventions and planning gatherings and parties and fan meets during these events, because ultimately my goal is I want the influencers to be happy. And it's very obvious that during events, when the influencers are like meeting up with their fans and, that they're like getting to see how big their community has gotten, seeing them being fulfilled is probably like the best part. And of course, I think just I'm really into event planning. So like I really enjoyed it was like 2019 TwitchCon. When I was still working at Streamlabs, we planned like a VIP brunch party for all of the creators and also just people in the industry. But I think definitely is, planning these gatherings, events, and also helping creators to really see that, hey, you've done something amazing and that this is like a community and they're all here to see you. That's definitely the best part.
Nick or Lindsey?
Yeah, I would say my favorite part is watching content creators grow from, small starting creators up to, creators with thousands and thousands of viewers on Twitch or hundreds of thousands and millions of views on YouTube. It's really cool to watch them succeed, and then being able to work with them and bring them deals that make sense for their brand and their audience, that help contribute to that success. I think that's my favorite part.
Yeah, very much in the same vein. It's you kind of get to feel like a bit parental at times of seeing those that you work with succeed. It's always so great of like, oh, look at it, like look at you. I'm so proud. And just kind of getting to be able to like share in that success. It's great. I think more recently, as I think it's more a bit due to like the all the stress and time that went into it of being able to plan like a charity event on a large scale and having our creators take part in that and seeing the amazing work that everyone can put in and do is very moving. Like I had like a cathartic, like I'm so happy cry at the end of our most recent event, as it's just like it blows me away at how generous and creative all these people can be to donate their time and kind of direct their communities towards like doing amazing things in this world.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely the times that all the research and all of the auditing has definitely paid off. I know specifically, I talk about Bert Black a lot because he loves GeForce now. He uses the product even off stream, even off of the contracted hours. Like he'll literally tell me like, hey, like I wish you could add this game because I really want to play this game as I'm like in bed playing on my phone. And then I knew that we were adding that game, but I couldn't tell him because it was under embargo. So when it was finally added, like the DMs were just like, lots of praise for the product and lots of like, yes, I absolutely use this. I'm a genuine user. I'm being paid to talk about this, but I'm not paid to say that it's good. I genuinely believe that, right? So seeing that actually go off multiple times, phenomenal.
Yeah, well executed campaigns, right? When the streamers actually hit their deliverables and it just works well. That's always a super satisfying bit, right? So yeah, I think we've talked a lot about the woes of being an influencer manager, maybe the highlights of being an influencer manager. So how do you become an influencer manager, right? It's not a clear pathway. I think one of the closest majors you can get is probably marketing, right? To that, but for freshly graduated students, it's not like there's an influencer major or anything like that. So is becoming an influencer manager a career path where you need to know a lot about influencers, or you need to be in the space, or I think we allude to relationships, right? Where do you think students can kind of start when growing those skill sets to become an influencer manager?
I can handle that. As we actually have an intern with us right now, and internships is a great way to be able to try and start. So that like that's the closest you can get is basically being an influencer manager intern. Is like that's going to be the closest to day-to-day experience. But what's going to really help you, whether you can get an internship like that or not, is going to be organization. That's been like one of the biggest keys is making sure that like whatever projects you're given or I guess kind of routes to go about is to make sure you're organizing everything very well, at least for yourself, so you can be able to translate that to what the current like whatever company needs. Kind of knowing the space as well, like being that person that's actively consuming content. Like it's like one of the cool things that we've kind of all touched on is that you get to watch a lot of awesome content creators through this whole thing, but you need to know of like who you'd actually want to work with in a dream scenario, and just trying to keep an eye on like what the I guess current like gaming trends are of like trying to predict the future in a sense of where things would be going. I think is a great way to kind of start. So you have a new perspective, especially as there's definitely becomes like a generational gap between the current like basically even now of like what I think is going to be happening and kind of getting that newer perspective of people who are still in college or just graduating can be completely different and really open my eyes to what we should be focusing on as a potential for the future. So keep that in mind as you're going forward.
Yeah. I would say constantly educating yourself about the space and what's happening and not being afraid to get uncomfortable and outside of that zone when it comes to content. So if you're somebody who only consumes first-person shooter content, maybe step outside of that and go and start watching some RPG videos and streams and really just do as much as you can to educate yourself.
Yeah, and I think on top of just like really knowing the space, I think networking. Again, I know every single panel, every single time we like always stress about networking, but I think genuine networking is really important. And what I mean by that is like, you know, really just get to know, like it's a like really get to know someone's work, on what they've done. So for example, like I still chat with people about like, hey, you know, what are some of the struggles that you faced with? What are some of the things that you learned this week? Can I share what I learned this week with you to see, you know, how can we exchange information? Obviously, like without leaking any like NDA stuff, but just constantly learning and learning from people around you is a great way to kind of get in this space as well.
Yeah, I would also say that if you know exactly what you're gonna or what exactly you want to get into managing, like whether it be Twitch or YouTube, that having a bit of experience in that space is also very helpful, right? Like knowing what their trials and tribulations are, being able to say like, oh, I've done this before, you know, maybe to a smaller degree. You probably, you know, and then you can say like, you probably want this asset for this reason. That helps out a lot. A lot of people get hired in an influencer management role because there's people who don't think about that kind of stuff. And usually there's only like one or two people. You don't really have a whole team. And so you're really the linchpin for your team to be able to talk to these influencers. So, you know, being able to understand both sides and translate, you know, the language really for from creators to brand and brand to creators is going to be absolutely key.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, Vicky's done it before, but just being a creator yourself, right? Being in your shoes of, hey, if I were reaching out to a brand, you know, I think even small things like communication method, right? Sometimes we do a lot of outreach via email, but it's like, oh, they're not on email, maybe they're like Discord, right? And so those small things are, if it's easier for the influencer, at the end of the day, that's who you're trying to really, you know, build a good relationship with. So yeah, I think that's, you know, those are key little bits as well. And
Yeah.
I think Dom, you kind of talked about Solino, but sorry, go ahead, Vicky.
All right, I had just one more thing. It's just like I think communicating like being able to provide big picture, like data slash like overview is like super important, because a lot of times like engineers or like product designers or you know other stakeholders within the company is not going to understand, oh, this is what the influencer is thinking about when they're using product XYZ or when they're seeing a certain UI UX interface. So you're going to have to be the person that really stands for the influencers to really like regurgitate that information in a way that the rest of the stakeholders in the company or in your team can digest. So I think that's also really important. Sorry, go on.
I completely echo that too. It's like being able to provide that feedback of like, here's what the current trends are, because, you know, as a, you know, for Coursera, at least, it's a company that like focuses much on like, you know, gamers and content creators alike. You know, it's hard to find those like the perfect overlaps of products and stuff like that. Be it like, you know, even something as what's becoming so universal as like mixers as part of like the audio setup, and making sure that we have products that like work with those in addition to, you know, being able to cross work with like PlayStation and PC as well. It's always such a it's nice to be able to like provide that feedback to PMs and whatnot who might not be focused on that aspect of their products.
Yeah.
Bridging the gap between creators and I would say traditional like media marketing. It's super important because you've got a lot of companies who are going to try and come into this space and advertise, and they're going to fall flat on their face because they don't understand creators. They don't understand what resonates with gamers in this audience. So your job is to help them do that because you understand both sides of the field.
Yeah, I actually think this, sorry, we're just gonna go down the line now. There's actually two more things that I really want to touch on. One, and I think this is super important, especially for like people like Nick, who have a bunch of products. There actually are some times too where you have to know when you need to send them to, you know, proper like engineering or troubleshooting, but knowing like some basics for your own brand, right? And being able to troubleshoot yourself is really helpful. Sometimes things go wrong while it's live, and like having that skill set to be like, oh, I've seen this before, you know, try ABC thing, and that'll help solve it most of the time, will literally save you and your brand a lot of headache. So being passionate about the brand and being really familiar with it, obviously, is a ginormous plus. And I can't remember the other one, but you know, we'll go back to Mark.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, knowing social platforms, right? You know, like, you know, Nick, you're talking about maybe an intern, they have a little bit they can add, right? But it's, we're pretty familiar with YouTube and Twitch, but it's like TikTok, right? TikTok, obviously an emerging platform. Gaming brands are really trying to get into it, but if you don't use TikTok, maybe someone else can use TikTok, right? And I think a lot of younger folks maybe are on TikTok every day. It's like you could turn that passion into something that actually maybe if you did some research and maybe put together some graphics, you can say, hey, this is what I think it could look like for TikTok, right? If you're not there already. So
yeah, it's actually something that we've expanded into. We've brought in like younger people to help out our social team, as while a lot of us may not be focused on TikTok, or like we value the platform, but it might just not be our normal go-to content. So then creating that creative aspect for it of like knowing what works. Sometimes it's just better to be able to hire on that person that does get it and does care about that sort of thing to like a very deep, passionate level. So it's something to be mindful of, is like if it's something you care about, that could be something that you look to focus on specifically, of like, look, I can find you these high quality TikTok content creators versus Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, what have you.
Yeah. Always emerging platforms. You never know when the next one's going to be up. And so yeah, it's always a fast moving space. And I think we've covered most, if not all, of the the tools and the platforms, right? Like Social Blade, Solinome. But would you say there's any others that are really key to knowing, what's going on, or familiarizing yourself with the industry? I think there's a lot of news websites, right? We're talking about staying up to date with the industry, or even just people to follow on Twitter, right? I think Twitter is a great place to be at. So, like, how do what tools do you use, or platforms or news outlets do you use to kind of stay up to date and do your job?
I'm going to take the easy answer. Oh, no, Vicky, go ahead.
Oh,
please.
no, go ahead.
Okay, the easy answer is twitter.com, baby. Get on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, I know a lot of college students aren't on Twitter. I know the rest of us are, so maybe we're going to just, skip over that. But Twitter is like absolutely key for gaming. Esports lives on Twitter. You live on Twitter if you're an influencer manager. And being able to, see and reach people like directly one-to-one like that is insane. Like that tool did not exist like 10 years ago, right? You had to go through a bunch of other people and know the right people. And now you can just see like, ABC influencers just rattling off their thoughts at 3 o'clock, and you're like, wow, that's incredible. And that might be something that, like, oh, if they think this, then like maybe this product would be really good for them. So that's the easy answer. And then I'll let everyone else go.
So I think that I've tried probably about 7 or 8 different influencer management tools now at this point. There are a bunch of them out there. They all have a little bit different angles and provide really insightful and great data. But I would say maybe getting your hands on one of those and starting to mess around with it. Some of them allow you to track keywords or key phrases even. So if your creator mentions your brand name in a live stream or in a YouTube video, or they type it in on one of their social media accounts, it'll populate that information for you and just plug it in right there. Or if they talk about competitors and you've keyed in those words, it'll show you that too. So really just getting familiar with a lot of the tools that are out there and available. Now, most of those tools are like paid for use, but if you can't get a hold of one of those, definitely lean into Solinome. That is my absolute favorite platform out there for finding Twitch analytics. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd say I'd echo that. I'd say any experience that you can kind of get with using Solinome or one of the free platforms really does translate to all the paid platforms. Like I currently use a platform called Stream Hatchet, mainly because it then lets me export like my entire, like all my streamers I can put into a team and then export that data into Excel. I'd say also getting like it's not a tool for finding content creators, but I would, if you don't already use it, use Excel and get familiar with it. It's something my dad always joked with me as like I was growing up. I'm like, why would I ever use that? And then I went to school for accounting, and that's all I learned how to use, and it's what I use daily as a way to kind of keep up to date and be able to kind of like, I guess, fine tune metrics. Because if it's something that like, oh yeah, viewer, like a lot of people can view as like viewerships and follower counts or everything, when really it's kind of a mix of 10 different metrics that kind of help you identify the like real star content creators for your brand, and so being able to kind of like work with those formulas and be able to derive that yourself is very powerful. But yeah, Twitter as well, I'd say, like, not just for finding new content creators, but also keeping up to date with yours. There's been many times where I've missed, or like I haven't been informed about like say like a charity event or they're celebrating their birthday, and I've like quickly reached out to them like right before they're going to start their stream, like, hey, you should run this giveaway. Let's celebrate this and do more for this sort of thing. Um, and they've always been like, oh, I didn't think about talking to you about that. I'm like, it's what I'm here for. I got you.
Yeah, I think also no brainer, but like I think Excel is super powerful because you could do literally everything from like CRM to accounting to like everything with that. So extremely important. But if your company or organization has the budget, and most startup tools out there right now are amazing, because usually 1 to 5 users is usually free. So like things like Figma, Asana, or just any of these kind of startup tools that you could get your hands on, super important. There's also this couple of other like startup softwares that I've tried out, like Superhuman. They're like an email marketing tool, super useful. They like just automate the crap out of your inbox so that I don't have to deal with email as much. I personally hate typing every single email. So that's super useful. And then also Boomerang is literally like your best friend in terms of scheduling email, tracking them, follow up and stuff, making sure that your influencers are even reading the email. I cannot stress how many times I'm like, I wish I knew that they opened it at least, but you know, with like tracking, you can make sure that they're at least looking at the emails. So these tools are like super helpful. In terms of news outlet, I think TechCrunch is an incredible resource to find out who are some of the startups that are getting funding. If they're getting funding, they're probably hiring a lot more engineers and people to make their products good. So it's always, and the good thing about startups is that their tools are usually at a very competitive price because they're looking to get users. So I definitely encourage people to try out new startup tools, whatever that they could get their hands on to have like a more productive workflow.
Yeah, and I think if you're also on like the agency side, I think there's a lot of benefit into looking into like actual esports news too, right? Because a lot of brands will sponsor teams, and those teams have a lot of influencers. Those usually get integrated into the deals now. So maybe if you represent talent, or you're looking at, hey, maybe this would be a good campaign down the line. If you're seeing that a brand's investing a lot in the esports and they haven't before, there could be a really great brand opportunity, right? So like Esports Insider, Esports Observer, I think those are great outlets for those. But yeah, I think that kind of concludes our main questions that we had. I think we'll hop on over to some audience questions that we have queued up. And I'm seeing the first one, which is, how do we get smaller orgs the chance to prove their ability to sponsor? I think there's a lot of smaller orgs, maybe tier 2, tier 3 orgs that may be up and coming. So Dom, if you want to take this away.
Yeah, the big thing I think here is like, if you can't provide, a number of followers, number of viewers, whatever, do something unique, do something really dope, and do something that's like very that proves that like what you're getting into with the brand. For example, for collegiate, I sponsored a really small school because they said like, hey, we'll do a video of us with like the PC that you're gonna send over, and we'll make it feel like this is what I would do with my best friend. And it was like a best friend video, and they like literally hauled the PC around and pretend like was like snuggling in bed with it and like feeding it, and like it was like very unique, very cool, very different. But it showed like they had a huge amount of passion for what we were doing, and they got it right. So instead of just throwing out numbers and throwing out those things, if you can't do that, do something very unique.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I would definitely say being able to add value and differentiate yourself for the brand that you're going after is super important, because these brands get hundreds of thousands of messages from aspiring content creators and aspiring organizations looking to get, their first in. And if you don't have something new to bring to the table, and you're not going to help, get eyes or, sell product, then why would the brand work with you over the other thousands of, creators that have worked out or that have reached out to them? Like, you really have to think about it from the brand's perspective when you're going into those deals or negotiations.
Yeah, and then one more thing I want to chime in on is like, you can be small and mighty. You don't have to be just small and disappear from the crowd. So it's really important for you to just find out like if you're small, obviously, there's a lot of limitations in terms of size and the size of the community that you have, but I think you can definitely make those up by showing either like, the amount of growth that you're experiencing, or like how does your brand fit super well with like Corsair's image or with Logitech's image. Like every single brand out there has like a specific image and tone and picture that they're trying to paint. So and I know that a lot of orgs work with big and small influencers and orgs, and that the reason is that they are looking for people who fit that type of image and brand. So, really make sure that you take a look at your organization or take a look at your content to see how can you provide extra value, like how can you provide like embodiment of this brand to Corsair or other brands too. I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think I know the original question was with the orgs, but unfortunately, I don't really work with, I don't really focus on the esports side of things too much. But I can give like some advice for, smaller content creators. The biggest thing I would focus on is how well you're able to activate your community. If you're very much able to kind of get them riled up about, supporting cool things that you're doing. I'd say also make sure that you're, trying to create something, like Dom said, very unique, as well. It's great to have, the get applications that are like, I'm a small up and coming content creator with a passionate community. And I don't know how many of those I have actually read in the last 3 years at this job. But it's having that idea of what helps separate you from not just all their content creators, but I love seeing applications that have taken time to realize who else that we work with and show that, like, here's how I differentiate myself from, from your current roster of content creators, and here's what I add and the different voice I can bring to this. And more often than not, I'm like, you know what? They're right. We should reach out and work with this person, even if it is something of like, let's start you off in our recruit role, which is, more of like a, working as an affiliate, and just kind of test things out, see how they go from there. And it's been very fruitful as a result. So having that knowledge of yourself and not just what, what all your competitors are doing, what other people in the space are doing, but having that confidence in, what you yourself are creating and the community that you fostered is just hands down one of the best things you can do, in my opinion.
Also, don't lie. If
Yes.
you're trying to work with a business, please don't lie to them. The internet is free.
It's
They
so
can look
easy.
up anything that you tell them. And if you said, oh, I get 100, average concurrent, and they go and they see 20, you are never going to work with that brand because you started off the relationship on a bad note.
Make sure you have
Yeah.
your VODs available, or like your content can be viewed
Yes.
somehow, some way.
Available.
Oh, just the
Yeah.
pain of like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, I need $5 for you to work with me. I'm like, no, you don't. Yes.
Yeah, Vicky mentioned it too. Make sure that we have an easy way of contacting you. Make sure your DMs are open and your emails are open. And then one other thing I think that kind of twists the question on its head. Even if you're small, collaborate. Collaborating is huge. Being able to work with other people and provide more value that way, phenomenal, right? If you can't work with people who are leagues above you in terms of viewership or have views or whatever, then work with a bunch of other small orgs or content creators and make something that like is greater than the sum of its parts, right? People will definitely take notice of that. And then I guess that answers a bunch of other questions, like how do you get into becoming an influence manager? How do you lead? Right. So there's a lot of really great benefits to collaborating. It's a headache sometimes, but definitely something I recommend doing.
Yeah. And then one more thing I want to add is a lot of, in my previous job at Hamel, we were, small, but we were also looking for other small communities to work with. And the type of personality that we really wanted to look for were the community leaders. So what this means is that like you not only have influence over your viewers, but you also have influence over like, or if you're an org, not only do you have influence over the organization, but you also have influence within like the scope of like, I don't know, collegiate esports or whatever the bigger community that you're in. And just having that trust and credibility within a community is actually super important. And that's what at least I can speak for my end, that like what I looked for when I was looking for, people to work with. I didn't really care about how big or small they are, but I cared about how much influence that they have directly over their community.
Yeah, like what other people would say about them, right? Like, are they the go-to person for this specific topic in this specific community? I think that says a lot about them, right? And if other influencers also say that, that's a huge point. And I think just to a word to smaller orgs or influencers out there, a no now doesn't necessarily mean a no forever, right? Like you can improve, you can adapt, you can change. And so just because, one brand says no to you right now, if you grow and if you do something new or you blow up, obviously, then I think, there's another chance in reaching out. So don't get discouraged is also what I think.
Yeah. I'd also like to add, if you're chasing, one company, that's great, but also keep your mind open, because there are people like me who work at an agency who are constantly looking for, smaller content creators and smaller orgs to partner with clients that I work with. So just don't tunnel yourself on one end goal. Just know that there are always other opportunities out there, and really focus on building yourself as a content creator and building your organization for the right reasons. And then the opportunities will come.
Yeah, I second Lindsey's just what she said. Like here at Fourth Wall, we actually like our goal is to obviously empower large creators on merch, but what we really also want to look for are creators who are up and coming. And the only way that you can establish that strong relationship early on is to, start working with them when they're small and keep supporting them. And so just because you're small, doesn't, as long as you put your heart and soul into content, and as long as you have a vision of how to grow your channel or how to grow your org, there are plenty of organizations that are looking for these type of criteria to partner with.
Awesome. Well, I think that really concludes it. I don't think we had any other questions come through. So we really do appreciate it. I think all the panelists had great answers and great insights to a lot of the questions today. And if you'd like to continue interacting with attendees, please, and answer the questions, you can join the Discord down below, continue the conversation. And once again, thank you for joining, everybody. Thank you for all the panelists for hopping on and answering some insightful questions as well with some insightful answers. And feel free to stay on the stream. There's going to be another panel coming up about life at Corsair here on the stream. So I think from us, that's it. But everyone else, you can stay around for another panel. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Bye.